Yeah.
Okay.
Maha, good evening.
Good evening, Ma.
How are
How are
you?
you? Yeah, fine. Going on. You're doing very well. All the sessions are very
Thank
nice.
you so much for joining the webinar, and I was happy to see you. My professor
Yeah,
Zenita is online. You can talk to her.
yeah,
Hello.
So,
sure. Hello, ma'am. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening, Mahalakshmi. Good to see
Thank you.
you. And good
Yeah, ma'am.
evening to all the others who are with us. Welcome. Welcome to the evening.
Yes, ma'am.
the minor research project at New Delhi.
Oh, that person.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. I'm doing in
Okay.
digital inclusion for SSG in both Bangalore rural and Coimbatore rural, ma'am.
Tell that again, ma'am. Excuse me, I didn't understand. What are you doing, ma'am?
Digital inclusion. It is a
Oh,
capacity building program for
okay. For?
SSGs in both. Actually,
Yeah.
I'm learning in the sense like why don't we actually relate management with these? I'm thinking of. So
You are welcome. You are welcome.
we'll do
Even
some.
we have lots of avenues onto thinking and projects further. You are
Okay.
welcome to associate. We are always there to give us your ideas and help.
Sure, ma'am. We'll do. Dr. Kamlameni actually is
Mm,
actually inspiring, and
yeah.
he is very innovative and
Mm,
coming
mm.
up with so many ideas. And
Okay.
in fact, we had some chat over when I visited
Uh,
the university,
okay.
and we will do something, ma'am, collaboratively.
Definitely,
Sure, ma'am.
definitely. Now, this physical mobility has actually distanced us physically, but otherwise, I feel accessing and talking on projects has become easier this way because we are able to
Exactly.
connect.
It's a
Yeah,
wonderful opportunity.
correct, correct, correct. So, it's only the intellectual
Otherwise,
property.
and
Yeah,
otherwise, we will be sticking on only to the physical movements, thereby
correct,
losing a lot of time. Whereas
correct.
here we save a lot of time, at the same time, it is very
Yeah,
productive. So
correct.
we will
Yeah,
join hands, ma'am. I will come up with
definitely,
some good ideas. So I'll discuss with
definitely.
you. We can proceed, ma'am.
I have a small team, but as you said, we are all very hot teams. So we will
That's
always be
true.
able to, we all have good ideas and we have motivations to work. So you're always
Yeah,
welcome.
I can
And
work from Bangalore. You can do
yeah,
in Coimbatore. We can do
definitely,
collaboratively.
definitely. Very nice, very nice.
Sure, ma'am. Nice meeting
Uh,
you.
Nice meeting you too.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. I'll be,
Okay.
I'll
Yeah, yeah,
be,
yeah. Correct, correct. Get, please.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Zenika ma'am,
Yes, I'm here.
receive the YouTube ID. I'll be forwarding it to you. So if
Okay,
anybody can join on this Google platform, they can use that now.
okay,
So I'll put on the chat box also.
okay.
Yes.
Hamnivini,
Ma'am?
see, I saw that should we go into that, we will remain here only, na?
No, no, we will remain here, ma'am. Those who can't come inside this, they can just go to YouTube and visit there.
That's it. Our presence is only here, na?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Because today I think numbers will be increasing.
More.
So,
I told you, I told you. Already we are nearing 50.
yes, ma'am.
And there are many newcomers.
Yes, ma'am.
Hmm.
Yes, Whitney has joined, ma'am.
Has she?
Yes.
Yeah.
Whitney, good
But
evening.
the mic is off. Yeah, she's on. Hi.
Hi, Whitney. Good evening.
Hi, Whitney. Welcome. Yeah. Are you able to hear us, Whitney? Oh, numbers are increasing fast. Whitney, are you there? Good morning.
Ma'am, Suresh Babu sir is in.
Yeah.
Shanmugam sir is in already. Our faculty members. Jayamala is in.
You said Suresh Babu. After that, whom did you say?
Jayamala.
Jaimala. Before that, you said somebody.
Shanmugam sir.
Ah, that's he's there from the beginning. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw. I saw. Jaimala is coming. Mm-hmm. Whitney is not, she's not able to hear us. Whitney, are you there?
Good evening, madam.
Good evening.
Doing admit.
Good evening.
Yes.
மங்கை
Ma'am, சொல்லுங்க ma'am.
எங்க மேடம் மேடம் சவுண்ட் ஒரே கலக்குறாங்க.
யாருங்க ma'am? நானா?
இல்லைங்க உங்களை நான் உங்களை விட பெரிய மேடம் இருக்காங்களே வீட்டுல.
ஓ, அவளா சொன்னா எனக்கு பெத்து நான் பேசணும் நாங்க. எனக்கு ரொம்ப பிடிக்கும் அவங்க. நான் பேச கொண்டாடுங்க அதான் கொடுத்தேன். பேசணும் எனக்கு எனக்கு அவங்க என்னமோ சொன்னா நல்ல வேர்ட் சொன்னாங்க. ஞாபகம் இல்ல சொன்னா. நான் பேசுறேன்.
நல்லா இருந்தது. மங்கை 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 off your mic. Whitney
Can you hear me?
has come. Yeah.
Mama Vinny?
Hi Whitney, good morning.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes.
Hi, how do you do?
Good.
Nice.
And are you able to see my slides?
No. I'm able to see only you.
It says I'm presenting.
Okay.
Hi, ma'am.
Hi.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye. God bless you. We'll talk to you later, darling. Whitney?
Yes.
Hi. I see you.
You see me? You don't see the slides?
No, I don't.
Okay, I'll stop presenting and see if I reshare.
Okay. Please share. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to share again and
Okay.
see.
Okay. I think now we'll be able to see. Yeah, now we can see your slides.
You
Yes.
see slides?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah?
Parenting while working from home in the time of COVID-19. Here we are.
Okay. Let me see to be able to present. Well, let me.
Okay. Yeah. Are you good?
I think I'm good, so you can let me know. We can get folks sometime.
Okay, definitely. So, how are things at Oregon?
Good. How are things there?
Yeah, kind of good. Still, the COVID has taken us for a ride.
Yes.
Yeah. But it was jolly good time there. I was like waiting to see you all decide for this May, and I think it will take some time now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're all working online, right?
Yes. You'll get to see
Okay.
a picture of it in my slides.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Right. Kamlevini, are you there?
Again, ma'am. I'm just targeting people because 81 have joined. We'll wait for some more time.
That's fine.
I'm sending the.
Okay. I think we got 5 more minutes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. So how's the weather there today? I think it's
Sunny, I think. Should be.
okay. Is it warm?
I've not been outside yet, so.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Winnie.
Hi, Jamala. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Hi, Mala. Hi, Mala.
Hi. I was rushing to join some of the work. Then how's things going on in Hogan?
Stuff
Yeah.
is good. Busy.
Yeah, missing you all.
Busy. Yeah, that's the way here too.
How was COVID there?
You know, it's impacting everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, are you all working at home or going back to university?
My kids right now just went on a breakfast picnic with my partner.
Yeah. Only now I can see Jaimala, and that it was transverse the other way.
Jenny ma'am, Susan
Yes.
has joined.
Oh yeah.
Susan
Okay.
has joined.
Okay.
Mala ma'am,
சொல்லுங்க கமலினி.
hi.
Hi.
Yeah, Susan has joined. Hi, Susan has joined.
Dr. Susan, good morning.
Good morning. I'm here. Hi, Whitney.
Hi,
Hi,
Winnie.
good morning.
Hi, Mala. Hi, Sheila. Hi,
Hi, Winnie.
Anita.
Hello. Oh, hi, Sheila.
Like a
how are you?
family reunion.
How are you?
Yeah, it looks good. Only that we not getting to sit together and what do you say? I'm not able to say exactly. We'll wait for another 5 minutes and we'll start, I think. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. This has been a tremendous experience for us and all of us in our department too, to have this meet online and get participants, and everybody's been giving us good feedback saying it's interesting, various perspectives of the details. So it's an experience for us too. Yeah.
Yeah, I've not used Google Meet before, so this has been my
Yeah.
first experience on this platform.
This all three of you said. Susan said this, Shadda said this, and you said. All of you said you're all more used to the Zoom, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Everything's on Zoom.
yeah. To be very frank, we are new to all of this, so we are still learning. Anyway, it's comfortable to get to join each other and talk even. The technology is really useful now, so I think this is a good way of it. Kamlaveni,
Yes, ma'am, I'm here, ma'am.
can we start? Yeah, we'll start.
It's searching for everyone.
Yeah. Shall we start?
Yeah, you can welcome Whitney and participants and others. Ma'am, we'll start, ma'am.
I know. So then participants can just join so that we
Yes,
don't rush the end.
yes, ma'am.
Okay?
I have
Is
also
it fine?
put on YouTube ID, ma'am. If
Okay.
any participant is not able to join, they can join from YouTube too.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We'll start.
So here we go.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, good morning to the overseas participants and good evening to the indigenous participants. It's indeed a prestigious moment for us, Department of Women's Studies of Bharatiya University, to be conducting this 3-day webinar. And today we have Whitney Archer, Jones Archer rather. So she is a PhD scholar and in charge of so many other, I think she will introduce herself when she starts. So welcome to the third day of the session. I think you can introduce yourself and give a prelude to whatever you're going to say. And I think I'll leave the floor open so that you have time to share your views and others also will have time to interact at the end of the session. Okay? So welcome
Excellent.
once again, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. And you can hear me?
Very clearly, thank you.
Okay, great. So just some logistic stuff as we're getting going. I'm sharing my screen with you. If you can't see it, you can hover over the slides and there's should be a thing that comes up that says pen, and that will allow you to see the slides and follow along with me. And then if you mute your mics, that will help all of us hear one another. If you have questions, we'll have a time for that at the end. But do feel free to jot them in the chat box if that's helpful as they come to mind as we're together today. Also, as the topic is parenting while working from home in the time of COVID, I do have 2 small children. They're out on a picnic right now, but they may return. So I understand that you may also have parenting duties and kids may show up on your screens, and I invite that into our time together today. I just want to start by sharing some gratitudes and thank you for having me as a part of this symposium. Trivandrum University, specifically the Women's Studies Department, Dr. Zanetta and Dr. Kalmaveni. So great to meet you when you were in Oregon and we had the chance to present together at the National Women's Studies Association, as well as to hear you present your scholarship at the Women and Gender Center where I work. It's also an honor to present alongside my classmate Shar and Dr. Susan Shaw. It's a joy to hear your presentations. And I hope for folks who've attended multiple sessions that you'll maybe see connections and overlap between what I talk about today and what you heard from their presentations. Also an immense joy to see Sheila and Jayamala on the call today. I had the chance to meet and travel with them around India when I was doing my master's work. And I think it's just really special to see how we can take this moment of COVID and continue to build transnational relationships and think about new ways to being together in the world. So thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this symposium. I want to start with a land acknowledgement to position myself and for us to all think around the spaces that we occupy and the legacies that they carry. So I'm joining you today from what we now call Corvallis, Oregon. It's on the traditional homelands of the Marys River or Wampanoag Band of the Kalapuya people. Following the Willamette Valley Treaty of 1855, the Kalapuya people were forcibly removed to reservations in Western Oregon. Today, living descendants of these people are part of the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde Community of Oregon and the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians. Every community owes its existence and vitality to generations from around the world whose contributed their hopes, dreams, and energy to making the history that led to this moment. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connection across barriers of heritage and difference. As we consider the role of colonization in both India and the United States, I invite us to pause and take a moment and consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us together today. Thank you. Just to give an overview of how we'll spend our time together is talk a little bit about who I am and my work, and then give you some context of childcare as it exists in the US prior to COVID, and how some of the issues and the crisis of childcare in our country have been compounded by COVID realities. I'll bring in some other voices, but I am speaking around my experiences. And at the end, I open it up for questions for us to engage together. So it's my hope that we can have a conversation and learn together during our time. So about me, so the picture, here's my family. So you can see myself, my partner, Carrie, and our 2 children. Dalton, the oldest, is 5. And pending how COVID continues to affect things, we'll be starting kindergarten this next fall. And my youngest, Holden, is going to be 3 next week. So with the age of my children, and as I think around childcare in the US, this is really focused on early childhood education and the infant and toddler care time. I think that is an area that as a nation in the US, we really struggle. The picture of the blue building is the Women and Gender Center at Oregon State University. That is where I typically go into work. It is one of 7 identity-based cultural centers on Oregon State University's campus. I like to think about it as a hub of feminist community building and action at OSU. And I miss being able to be there and support the students in person. But my work and working with students has continued despite in early March or mid-March. We have now, I guess to say, we have surpassed 100 days of not having childcare in our family as we moved to remote delivery at OSU, and I left the Women and Gender Center physically, but I continue to do work from my home. So you can see here my kids eating breakfast, and right behind them is the computer that I'm sitting at speaking with you right now. So work has now really infiltrated home, and home and family life are very much a part of the day-to-day work that I am doing. Sitting at that desk, I've continued to meet with students on Zoom calls and to chat with them and to continue to do work to build community on our campus with the students I work with. Looks like maybe there's slide issues. Are people not seeing things? Okay.
Yeah, I think so. Because I'm not able to see. I was able to see, now I'm not able to see your slides.
Okay, if they went away, if you hover over the image that you see of them, let me try to reshare.
Okay, thank you. That will
Yeah.
be nice. That will be nice. Maybe because the number of participants have increased.
How is, are you seeing? Okay. We will work with the technology.
Yeah.
Are folks able to see my slides now? Looks like they're loading.
Not yet, not yet.
It
Ma'am, it is
does look
shared, ma'am. It is shared, ma'am.
Okay,
Okay.
okay, go ahead. Yeah, it's
Okay.
go ahead, yeah.
Okay, thank you all. So, yeah, and I should have said when I had the picture of the house up, so I lead the Women and Gender Center, and
Yes.
as was mentioned in the introduction, I also am a PhD student in the Women, Gender, and Sexuality Studies program at OSU. As I think about this conversation around parenting and bringing my work life really home, that is impacted both by Corona and I think this moment where we have seen following the murder of George Floyd and more visibility of anti-Black racism in the US and the ways that state violence operates. Also thinking around the movement for Black lives and what that means as a white parent of white children and the proximity I spend with them and how I'm showing up in racial justice values. So to give an overview, I have a few slides here to contextualize childcare in the United States. And again, this is focusing as I think about like early childhood care. So I'll read some of the statistics for you, that 60% of children in the United States under the age of 6 have both their parents in the workforce, so working outside of the home. Even as more fathers are taking on responsibilities in the child rearing, women still take on the bulk of child raising responsibilities and house care work. So Dr. Susan Shaw mentioned just kind of thinking about the second shift, right? Even as women have grown and in some families are primary breadwinners, they're still coming home and doing a full job of caring for the house and the children. And that is continues to be true here, right? And that the cost of childcare, so in the US, we don't have for under kindergarten and in a lot of cases under preschool, a lot of governmental support for that. So the cost of childcare is very significant. And while it varies across our nation, it averages to about $10,000 a year per child. And as we look at the national rankings, Oregon is rated 14th out of 50 states, and DC is most expensive for infant care. And you see here a quote for a parent from DC: "I love being a parent, but the cost of childcare for a child under 2 is so expensive in the Washington, DC metro area, more than half of my paycheck goes to childcare." In the despite how much families are paying for childcare, there are many of the teachers and early childhood educators who are paid near poverty wages. So there's lots of overhead in running facilities and centers to provide care for children, and ratios of children to teachers. The pay that we as families are paying to put our kids in care is not being passed along to those who are spending their days teaching and educating our kids. And we know that these years are significant to student or to kids' cognitive, emotional, and social development. So we look at who's doing this work. Nearly 96% of our teachers and childcare workers are women, and disproportionately women of color. And as we think around support and other benefits, only 15% of childcare workers receive any form of healthcare insurance benefits from their employer. So there's a term that's been floating around more recently as we think around the crisis of childcare in the US called a childcare desert, right? And that means there are many more children in need of care than there are spots being provided. And over half of folks in the United States live in what has been designated a childcare desert. And we see that it's especially high among Latinx families, rural families, and low-income families. And thinking around, as I said earlier, the number of children who have both their parents who are working outside of the home, we see this specifically as we think around gender, that 69% of mothers of young children participate in the labor force. And when people live in a childcare desert, that impacts their ability to stay in the workforce. In 2016, we saw 2 million parents make career sacrifices or changes due to issues with childcare. So whether that was access to childcare and getting a spot, having culturally competent care providers, and having care that met their needs. And that when we think around the impact on families, particularly heterosexual families, that women are more likely, 40% more likely than fathers, to report that they had a negative impact on their career based on issues their family is facing because of childcare. And that notably our families of color, parents of color, have much more difficulty finding care, particularly Black and Indigenous parents. And this can be getting access to a spot, any spot, and then if it is a spot that they can get into, having teachers who are prepared to educate their children and support and validate their children. So this is just a map to let you see how prominent childcare deserts are across the US. So the darker orange or red that you see the state filled in, the more difficulty there is to access childcare in those areas. This is a quote I want to read for you. It says, "There is a deep disconnect in the way that the US conceives of its obligation to children. Most Americans accept, even demand, a public subsidy of education from the moment kids turn 5 and enter kindergarten to the day they graduate from a state university or community college. But from birth to 5, children are on their own, or more precisely, their parents are on their own. And I think this shows how isolating it can be as you're navigating childcare as a parent, as a new parent. And this is all pre the pandemic realities of COVID. And as families now are moving childcare into their homes and continuing to do their work, that isolation and solitude can be really difficult, as well as folks having access to the skills and that they're wanting to support kids. Like as I mentioned, work with college students. Never in my life did I think I was going to be a preschool teacher. And in the last 3 months, I have been doing my regular job and serving as a preschool teacher for my kids, in addition to my parental duties that I provide them and care and love and labor. So thinking around how COVID is impacting the basis of childcare in the US, right? We know that those areas that were already a childcare desert before the coronavirus are going to continue to be impacted. And there's also a high range of low wage and essential workers during the pandemic in these areas, right? So you have low wage workers who are deemed essential, who maybe have lost their childcare, right? So families are pivoting and having to make decisions to keep their job and then where they're sending their children if their childcare facility has been closed. And because of the way COVID is transferred, right, and people become susceptible to it, the risk of putting your children in an environment, right, is an added weight that lots of parents, particularly our frontline workers, are experiencing. As a result of the pandemic, 14% of women have considered quitting their jobs. And many childcare providers in low and middle income neighborhoods and towns face prolonged interruption and could lead to permanent closure. So even as we, through federal and state adjustments to reopen and go through phases of reopening, that some of the childcare facilities may not be able to reopen, and this will lead to permanent closure. And this impacts the families who are needing this care, as well as the workers who were providing care in these facilities. So the domino effect is, as these have been closed for people to do remote work, now we have early childhood educators who were already living at poverty wages, now facing unemployment, and perhaps unemployment for the long term as these facilities may close. And as I think around specifically Oregon State University in our area, which maps on, I think, more broadly in other places as well, is that the COVID pandemic exacerbated already desperate childcare situation. Here in Corvallis, we are a childcare desert, and prior to the outbreak, there was only 1 slot available for every 3 children who were needing care. We got on childcare lists to get access for our children before my partner was pregnant with our children, because we knew if we were not on a list, we would not have care by the time that we needed it. This next slide is looking specifically, as I think, around the Oregon State University community. And our Family Resource Center did a survey of parents to check in, like, how are you doing? And I want to read how some folks in our OSU community responded. The person says, "We're limping along. We're a family of 4, 2 professors, 2 kids, 1 in 2nd grade, 1 in preschool. The homeschooling plus preschool plus online delivery of university classes plus expectation to mentor our grad students and keep research going, all without childcare support, has been brutal. I think the pandemic is making visible some issues that have been around for a while. Lack of affordable childcare in Corvallis, the overburdening of academic women with parenting and household duties that are not CV legible. Dr. Shah mentioned right, that OSU has paused the 10-year clock for folks, right, knowing who's going to be most impacted in this time of COVID, right? But that doesn't mean that, well, I guess it doesn't. So as we think around who's impacted, right, there are male professors who talk around this being the most productive time for them, right, where women are carrying this added burden. Another member of our community says, I'm tired, nervous about sending kiddos back to school and daycare, unsure what to do if daycare opens up again, but we don't feel safe about what that means for our slot in the program. Will we need to pay a full fee or reduced fee to maintain our spot? I'm also worried there won't be a single directive for folks and programs to follow, and that instead everyone will make up their own approaches and rules to meet the requirements. And that inconsistency, there will be a less oversight and safeguards in place. So these are just 3 thoughts that are weighing on members of our community, and I know weigh heavily on me as well. So I want to talk a little bit about how all of this has impacted me and my family and our new routine. So before Corona, my partner and I would take our children to daycare facility. And now in order to make things work and for both my partner and I to do work, she works in a job that has her leaving outside, working outside of the home, and thankfully has a company that has been trying to be supportive of us as a family with 2 full-time working parents, that she leaves our house at 5:30 in the morning and goes and does a shift in her office between 5:30 and like 11:30 or noon, depending on when meetings and things get going for my schedule each day. And so that morning time, I am with our kids and doing breakfast, bath routines, getting them up and ready for the day, and also trying to check email, make sure I'm not missing things that are coming in pertinent to my work, as well as trying to create curriculum for them that they're engaged with. And to some shows, but you know, to do my work, it doesn't feel like I'm living my values to just sit them in front of a television screen all morning. And so, you know, we spend time trying to have a curriculum.
Excuse me, ma'am. Yeah, PPT. Please share the PPT, ma'am.
PPT is not seen with me. Yeah, it's
Pardon?
not the PPT is not shared to the participants.
Okay, I'll reshare it.
Yeah.
I think when others share, it goes away. So 1 second.
You just, as you go on, just see the text box. If at all the screen is not seen, I'll text you on the text box.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll watch.
It's visible now. It's visible now.
No, ma'am. You are waiting, ma'am. You are waiting, ma'am. No.
Oh, okay. It's not it's just a
Yes,
picture.
yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
go
ma'am.
ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, if participants pin the presentation, you should be able to see that. So I was just sharing a bit around how our routine has changed as 2 full-time working parents, and that my partner now, while we used to both work around 8 to 5, she's now going in at 5:30 in the morning to work an earlier shift so that I can do a later shift. But things are difficult that, you know, some of the easiest times for me to do work right now are when my kids are sleeping, right? So if I can get up early in the morning or stay up late or while they're napping. But in my office, we have a policy that says we are not to do work correspondence and email before 8 a.m. or after 8 p.m. And that's negative. I understand my boss trying to be supportive of saying we shouldn't be working all of the time. But now that my work life and my family life are so intertwined, I need that time after my kids have gone to bed, and that time has been taken from me because of the realities of my work from home. So I would be remiss to talk around parenting and the time that we're living in right now, particularly as a white parent raising white children, if I don't talk about another pandemic that's actually been baked into the U.S., right? And I think it's important that we think about racism itself as a pandemic, right? And that we have seen through the history, the founding of the United States through today, a real sense of anti-Blackness and racism more broadly. And the murder of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Tony McDade, and others have really brought in an awareness for particularly white folks. There's lots of white folks who are beginning to see this racism for the first time, whether that's connected to being at home due to the pandemic and how we're getting information. But I think we are at a crucible moment as a country around now as folks are realizing that the severity of racism, what we're going to do about it, and to stay in this work sustained, not just share Facebook posts or articles, but to really show up and do work that is not just non-racist, but is anti-racist. And to me, that starts with my family. Robin DiAngelo, who wrote the book White Fragility, cites scholarship that says white children have been shown to have a sense of racial superiority by the time of preschool. So I look at my young children who I showed you on one of the early slides, right? And to know that they're already internalizing a sense of dominance and superiority, right? I think that this also plays in as we look at how families of color struggle with finding childcare that they feel like validates their children, right? And supports them. So part of my work, I think, as I talk around building a curriculum and supporting my kids now that we're at home, is to be really intentional about talking about racism and anti-Blackness with my kids. And these are conversations that weren't had with me as a kid, that I started to have in college. And so for me, it's been reaching out and building community with other parents who are wanting to show up and do different and to engage with kids. We talked about race forever since becoming a parent, but in this moment, not shying away from, if the radio's on and they're talking around police violence and the shooting of unarmed Black bodies, Black people, to ask my kids what they're thinking and what they're feeling about about that news, and to engage with them and to not shy away from those conversations. Here in our own community in Corvallis, we have seen activism showing up through several protests and rallies. Students of color from our campus at OSU have organized rallies that have taken place on campus and sharing around the violence and racism they experience at OSU. And then this picture is one of a kids march for racial justice that drew about 300, 400 families from across our community, where over half the participants were kids, being willing to stand up and say, like, we see these inequities, we see this, and we want to stand up and we want to do more. So I am hopeful we can be at a turning point as we think about addressing the pandemic of anti-Blackness and racism in the US, and using this moment to build community with other folks who are wanting to show up and engage in these conversations and do the work to move the dial. And I'm
Ma'am, please share your PPT, ma'am. Please share your PPT, ma'am. Yeah, against problem. Sorry, ma'am. Sorry.
no worries. There's not much left, so I'll
Yeah, I have to inform you, ma'am. Yeah. Now it is okay, ma'am. Please carry on, ma'am.
Okay, so this is just the image of the children's march that happened in our town that my children and I went to, right? And I weigh the risk of, do we go out in public, mask up? What risk are we taking for our kids? But it feels like too important not to go out and be in community and stand in solidarity as anti-racist parents. And I am hopeful that this moment may, as we think around addressing the childcare crises that I walked you through in the beginning, thinking around the state of early childhood care here in the United States, that as we do reopen care facilities, that we begin to address access to care for families, that we're doing so from a really strong intersectional lens, taking into account, right, the way in which this labor is gendered, of parenting, also the way in which racism shows up in our schools, and that we can really dream and imagine new ways of teaching and educating our youth. And so I feel like we've taken this moment that has been difficult, to say the least, to work full-time and parent full-time. And
excuse me, ma'am. Ma'am, please share the PPT, ma'am. Again, I'm sorry, ma'am. Participants, please don't share.
I'll keep going. We'll just be wrapping up for questions here in a moment. But I'm trying to really choose in this moment to be hopeful that we can take this moment, the crises of childcare, as well as the crises and pandemic of racism, as a moment for our country to show up and do better. And so with that, I
excuse me, ma'am.
turn it over.
Ma'am, please share your PPT, ma'am.
Yeah, right now we're gonna move to the questions portion. I want to thank you for listening and hearing my story, right? Like what I have been doing and engaging with my kids and adapting to the loss of formalized childcare outside of the home is one story, I hope complemented by some of the other voices brought in. But I invite your questions around parenting at this particular moment, maybe things that you see similarities or questions that are coming up for you. So people can unmute themselves to ask a question, and I'll now try and take a look at the chat box as well. But thank you.
Hi, Whitney. Can you hear me, Whitney?
Yes.
Yes, that was a very nice presentation talking about facts and the ground realities of parenting at that situation. I think it was good. Thank you for the presentation and your time. Hello. I think there's Archana there with a question. Maybe you can answer her. You have a question, Archana? Unmute your mic. Archana, unmute your mic. Your mic is off. Yeah. You're not clear, Archana. You're not clear. You're not clear.
If someone has a question, I would invite you to type it in the chat and I can see it there.
That will be better. Why don't you type your question? Archana, type your question.
I'd be curious if there's not specific questions maybe on some of what I've shared. How is parenting been impacted for you all in this time of COVID? Has there been changes in who's doing labor or what labor looks like or not?
One question is there, ma'am. Child care is a problem of all over the world. In chat box, ma'am. Please see, ma'am. In chat box, one question is there, ma'am.
Yeah.
Child care is a problem of all over the world during the pandemic period, but working as well as non-working women. Give you suggestions how to handle, ma'am.
Yeah, I hear that.
Can you see that question? There is a question from Mahalakshmi.
No, Kamlavini, hold on. Let her finish the answer for the first question asked.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I wasn't sure if there was a specific question in there. I do want to acknowledge, I think, yeah, that the ways in which childcare is an issue around the
She's
world.
not audible now.
No, that was a question from the box. So she's just trying to answer.
Yeah, let me look. Sorry.
There is a Kalpana.
So how
who
do I
asked a
feel
question.
now with my children at home? You know, it has gone up and down. It has been very difficult on our children. My oldest has really mourned and grieved the time with their friends. And adjusting to the new routine, I think, has been much more difficult for them than it has been for our youngest or for us as parents. We've had a lot of acting out and big emotions. And so really needing to make sure that while my work is brought home, that my most important job is to parent my kids. And so I feel lots of feelings about having them home. At times I feel stressed and overwhelmed. At times I'm really trying to embrace the joy of getting more time with them and seeing them learn and grow. And I think because of the protests happening right now, I'm actually grateful to be able to have those conversations with them that I don't think that they would be having in their preschool classrooms.
I think that was good. Can I come up with one more?
Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Can I
Yes.
speak,
Yes.
ma'am? I'm
Yes.
Padma from Famous College. First
Yes,
of all,
please.
hats off to the organizers. Special thanks to Dr. Kamalaveni, ma'am. And thank you, ma'am, for Whitney, ma'am, for providing us knowledge about parenting. One question. See, in Indian style of parenting, it is entirely different when compared to foreign styles. Right, ma'am? So, in spite of this parenting style, India faces most of the problems related to children. Can you recommend any special thing to correct the parenting style of our country, ma'am? Do you have any research reports telling how to parent and how to overcome the difficulties faced by the parents? Can you give us just suggestions, ma'am? Thank you.
Yeah, can you say one more? So I'm hearing what you're talking around the cultural context of parenting in India. Are you speaking about the gendered roles that like mothers versus
General
fathers?
parenting, ma'am.
The gender parenting?
General parenting. See, the general parenting in India is entirely general parenting in India, style in India, when compared to foreign countries is entirely different. So we don't give liberty to children until the age of 18 or whatever it is, until they come out of the clutches, until they wish to come out of the clutches. But still, in spite of those things, parents are finding it difficult to control the children, or children are deviating from the things which they are not needed to do. So what can we recommend for them as parents or for children?
Yeah. I mean, I think cultural context is the most important, right? That we can't just map things that may be happening with my family into other families or in the US to other places. But I do think that there is lots of research in like early childhood development, brain development, their social emotional development, around how brilliant and resilient they are. And so finding ways to support their curiosity, I think, is really important to children's development. And I think as far as one thing that I've noticed in research as well, right, the kids are going to mirror environments that they're a part of, right? So I think sometimes we look and say change is going to come with the next generation, when even in this time of the pandemic, when my oldest was having outbreaks or outbursts, I was like, wow, like I think actually they are picking up on the emotions of my partner and I and like our stress. And so when we were able to make sure we were taking care of our own stress, we noticed Dalton's stress calming, right? And so I think to me, it's inviting parents to model the sorts of changes they're hoping for their kids and not just putting it on the next generation to make the changes.
Okay.
Hello, madam.
Thank you for the question.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible. Just represent your name and come ahead.
Yes. This is Debojani from the Center for Women's Studies, Dibrugarh University.
Hi.
Hello.
Yes, I just wanted to know, do you think that, the pandemic has created more burden on women in the context of their role as a parent? And both women, both working women as well as those women who are the house, those who work at the house. I mean, those are not working. For the working women, as they have to also look after the official works, the works from home, and also to take care of their children and all other household work. And for the women who used to earlier get some time for themselves when their kids, go out to the schools or all the activities. So do you think women's role as a parent, there is a more burden on women during this pandemic situation? What is your opinion on that, ma'am?
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. And I think that point around like the different types of labor, right? So there are mothers and parents who were maybe full-time caregivers and not working outside of the house. And I do think that both are feeling more of a burden at this moment, right? For something that you pointed out, right? Without a break. So maybe you are a working parent in the house, right? Because I do think that is its own form of labor and work, but your kids go to school for part of the day and you're not getting that break anymore, like that pause. And I think that that's an exhaustion and fatigue that many parents are feeling right now. And from like the early research and anecdotes that are out there, women are taking on the bulk of this burden. There was a story that was very poor reporting that was in the New York Times about maybe a month and a half ago, that there was a mother who worked outside of the home, and her partner, he was at home, he was not working, and she had to quit her job because he was not pulling the weight to care for the child anymore at the pandemic, right? And I say it was poor reporting because they didn't really talk about like, there was a dad who wasn't stepping up to take care of his kids. It was the story of like this woman needing to make this difficult choice, right? And so how it was framed was troubling, but yeah, the burden is definitely there.
Also, do you think there will be more enforcement of gender roles? Because after kids see women performing all the duties, so do you think, it will create more enforcement of gender roles, the gendered roles, in fact?
Yeah, I think time is going to tell, right? That this moment is greatly impacting all of us, right? Like we are all being impacted by living through this pandemic. So I think time will tell how that shows up. And I think it may be variations, because I think that even if it is not the majority or not what we're seeing in the reporting, I do think that there are families where people are carrying the burden differently. One of the quotes, and I could pull here, that came from, I didn't put it in the just give me a second to make it where I can see it here. I didn't put it in the slides, but one of the other quotes that came up from the survey that our campus did said, "My biggest frustration in the midst of COVID is the lack of consideration within my department, college, and university for the important roles that many men fulfill raising their children while trying to maintain their professional lives." And felt like he was feeling pressure by his work. He wasn't being supported by work and his parenting duties while trying to do that at home internally. So I think for that family, the kids are seeing a father stepping up. But yeah, I think you raise good things for us to take note of what this moment is going to mean as we think around both the challenge of gender roles as well as the like rigiding of those in some cases.
Ma'am.
Thank you.
Hello.
Thank you. Yes, who's that?
Ma'am,
Represent
Ashika,
yourself.
ma'am.
Yes, Ashika. Represent yourself.
Ma'am, I'm Ashika.
Okay.
Whether parenting is difficult in your in your country, ma'am.
No,
Is
her presentation was clear enough. I think. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Please go ahead, Whitney.
Ma'am,
was the
whether
question if the parenting was difficult?
Yeah.
no, ma'am. In US, whether parenting is difficult or not. That's
Yeah. I mean, I think parenthood is a difficult role that we hold. And it's definitely informed by cultural context, but there are things in the US context that I think, particularly from like birth to 5, that we do not step up and support parents and thus do not support children in the way that I think would be beneficial.
yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Whitney, I think Ravi Shankar has got a question.
Correct. Correct. I just saw that. It's interesting.
Do you think working from home for women is more productive in the amidst of parenting and all household chores? Your experience.
Is that
In
one
chat
written?
box,
Sorry, there's so much coming in.
Yeah, it's out of the chat box.
Chat box.
Just scroll down.
Yeah, I'm trying. Can you just maybe repeat it one more time while I'm looking for it to see?
Ravi Shankar, it is. Do you think working from home for women is more productive amidst of parenting and all household chores? Your experience on that?
Yeah. I have not found that. I feel that I come to this conversation feeling like multitasking is not really possible, right? If we're doing multiple things at once, we're not doing any of them very well. And I feel like this moment has really made that clear for me. Things take longer, right? Whether that's rereading an email because I was interrupted or being able to have dedicated time to do some projects that take a certain amount of mental and energy. That's hard when things are the demands of kids, right? And I love spending time with them, but part of our time home was we've been potty training our youngest, right? So those needs are more urgent. And so I pivot to that. So I don't feel, as far as my productivity of work, stuff is taking much longer to get the same level done.
A good answer. And Munisha from LCH College of Pharmacy has got a question. You can just scroll down. And she says that really it's very hard for the kids to cope up with the racism. We parents should teach them to overcome the situation. And what are the ways to teach them is her question.
Yeah, I think that it is a work in progress, but something that was a very popular ideology as I was raised, and I think is a lingering ideology in a lot of discourse in the US, is an idea of being colorblind, right? That we're not supposed to see color or see racial difference. And how much that erases the humanity and lived experience of people of color. So as I talk about, even before this most recent, like, attention being given following the police violence, was talking around that, like talking to my kids to notice difference, right? And the difference isn't inherently wrong or flawed, but that there are differences, and that based off the founding of our nation on stolen land and on stolen bodies for slave labor, that there are legacies of those different racial experiences being treated differently. So, we strive to have age-appropriate conversations to help them be able to prepare to engage in that. There's a book called Something Happened in Our Town that is about a police shooting of a Black man. And so that's a children's book. So we can read that and we can have a conversation with our kids around how they're thinking and feeling, and for them to understand justice and to stand up for that.
Thank you. I think there's one interesting question. Premlata has asked.
Ma'am, just one second, ma'am.
Okay.
I would support this point that recently there was a short movie which talks about the parenting on racism. where
Okay.
a black mother and white mother teaches their children where humanity is important rather than racism. So there was a short video shared in Indian social medias.
Okay, that's nice.
Yeah.
Now about the question Premalata has asked, okay, it's in the chat box. How kinship apart from grandparents play a vital role in parenting in the US? Here in India, extended kinship has an important role in parenting. So she wants to know what difference does it make in the US?
Yeah. You know, I think that in white culture in the US, it's very, it is much more common to not have those broader kinship networks in supporting parenting, where we see, and some of that even comes up in the research around childcare deserts, right? Where we would, when we look demographically around the areas where folks are seeking care, that sometimes in communities of color, Latinx communities and Black communities in particular, that folks aren't saying they don't, there's less of a demand for care because of these kinship networks and these extended family networks that assist with parenting. And the kind of individualism of white culture shies away from that, and I think really can make parenting extra isolating. So I think having extended kinship networks, whether those are by birth, you know, grandparents or other things, or like kinship networks by choice, that those are really vital to supporting parents and in turn supporting children.
Okay. Jaimala, are you there? You can ask with me. Your question is good. Are you there?
Jaimala?
Okay,
Yeah.
I will
Yeah, Mahalakshmi is having a question.
Okay.
You can just call down with me. It's like she has appreciated you for your presentation, and she would like to know if any initiatives by government or NGOs are on the way to address racism issues among children.
If there's any initiatives on the way?
Yeah, she just wants to know the information on that.
Yeah. I think there are lots of resources floating around online right now. I think that there are more children's books now than when I was a kid, but the way in which we see racism play out, right, is that it's on interpersonal, but then these structural ways where getting books published about families of color are much more difficult, right? So they run into publishing barriers. So you're seeing more self-published things coming out and more resources. I think that it's going to take, and this is where I'm hopeful and time will tell, there is a broadening within white communities and within white individuals of the severity of racism and anti-Blackness in our country. And time will tell if we stay in the hard work of that. When you experience dominance, it's easy to go back into, that doesn't affect me, that's not my issue to deal with. And I'm hopeful that there'll be a critical mass of folks who stay in this for the long haul, who can then begin demanding reforms and education. And we can see that right now with, and this is with older kids in my age, right, but that there's elementary schools, middle schools, high schools that have armed police officers, and you're seeing districts based off petitions from parents and others who are saying we don't want police in our schools. And I think that that's a start, right? But we need to also say who's in the curriculum. What gets taught is the main text of history, and what gets added is like a sidebar. So I think there's uprisings happening. I don't know of any like nationwide initiatives right now. It's more grassroots and local, but I think that that is where change can begin to happen and demonstrate what's possible more broadly.
That's nice. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So-
There's a very interesting question by Professor R. Rajendran. His question is, what is the effect on emotional intelligence during COVID-19 in parenting? I think that's a big question.
Yeah. You know, one that I probably don't, I think it is a great question and it is a big question. And I think like the impact of this moment, time will tell, but I think that there is a level of fatigue that parents are feeling that can be mirrored by kids right now. Because of demands to, again, continue to be working from home while also focused on our children and their development.
Yeah, it is going to be demanding. I think one more, and I'll leave the floor. Jayamala wants to know if with the change in the parenting style during the pandemic, do you feel that there will be change in the future of the growth in kids and the future society? How would they turn out to be? Do you see a change?
Yeah, not to be repetitive, but I do think time will tell on that, because I can see where in some ways, my kids now understand what I do in a different way. Like, they came to work in the Women and Gender Center and I talked about my work, but they see my work in a different way, right? So I think it models what work can look like and the possibility of that. They've seen their parents change and like pivot and adapt. So I think that there's some real resilience that can be taught there. I also worry that, so in the US, we have a term, it gets used sometimes, called a helicopter parent, right? That parents hover so closely over their children to try and protect them from any sort of discomfort or harm, that it becomes detrimental to their development, because we know risk is healthy and good for children. And I worry because of the pandemic and like risks of exposure. And you heard this in one of the quotes that I shared, right? Like, even if the school opens, will I feel safe to send them back? And I worry that maybe there'll be a negative impact around our ability to let students take risk, and like parents to be even more overprotective. So I think there's a lot of potential at the moment, and it's a good question, Jayamala, and we will see what the long-term impact of this is.
How the wave will move. We'll have to see.
Nisha has got a question on how are you to manage and give counseling to racial parents regarding care of their children during COVID-19 period?
I'm scrolling to find it. Can you repeat the question one more time?
Kamlaveni, repeat the question.
Yeah. How do you manage and give counseling to racial parents regarding care of their children during COVID-19 period?
Yeah. If I'm understanding, I think that, so as I think about like racial justice as a parent, I have been doing a weekly Zoom call with some other white parents to talk about how we're discussing race with our kids. I think in a lot of ways, racism and showing up to change systems, we as white folks who come from a place of racial dominance need to use that to push the dial. And so my work, I feel like, is with other white parents, not to give advice to parents of color.
Yeah. I think there was one more question.
Narayana has got a question. In the US, do you think that parenting is a difficult process due to the availability of child helpline facilities?
Yeah.
Which sometimes leads to traumatic experience for parents. Should I repeat it, Whitney?
Yeah, I think just the role is difficult because of the time.
Okay. So do you have helpline facilities for parenting? I mean, in US, that's what is the question. So does it make it difficult?
Without helping helping networks and facilities?
Actually, you're supported, right?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that there are support mechanisms in place, but many are underfunded and hard to access.
Okay, Jagadambal, Human Development, from her, there she has got a question. Please, could you suggest some ways by which parents could minimize the burden of childcare during this pandemic? I think instead of lamenting over what has happened, we all need to overcome it. So she's asking you to suggest by which parents could minimize the burden of childcare.
Yeah. To me, it's, well, there is definitely a place where childcare can become a burden. It's also, to me, it's trying to balance, I'm trying to think the best way to say this, around there are days that I definitely feel like it is a burden. And then I'm also trying to flip the narrative and not see my children as a burden and see it as an opportunity to spend more time with them. And so that has taken more work on the front end to like schedule my time so that I know I'm going to spend this hour to this hour sitting at my computer doing work or on the phone with students so that I can spend this hour to this hour focused on my kids, right? Because I don't think we're that great at multitasking, and when we're trying to do it all the time, we're not doing any of it well. And I think that's been good for my kids' development to see like, okay, you're doing that time now, we're going to have this other time later.
So I think with this last question, we'll end the session. One more question.
Yes.
So it is like stop. So it is from Saravanan. So his question is, what is the conflict between Indian child and USA child during this quarantine, and how both parents are handling them? Tell about your experience, ma'am.
The difference in like the conflict between, or what? Okay, I see here.
You can just scroll down. That's Saravanan.
Yeah, no, I see it around the conflict between Indian child and USA child during, and how are both parents handling them. You know, I had good days and bad days. One thing that I've tried to do that I think challenges kind of the white individualism that's rampant in the US is to reach out and ask for help and to like build a community, back to that question around like kinship networks, to support folks and to not feel alone in the days that I internalize the message that I have to do it all and complete it all. Those are the days that are roughest on me and on my children.
Any more questions? Anybody else want to talk, or you want to show up? Anybody there?
Yeah, there are some more questions, but I think we are running out of time.
Yeah.
Is it okay to give some more questions?
Yeah.
Do you have time, Whitney? How do you feel?
Yeah, and I can, I have time. And I see more around like the questions here around if COVID changed the strength of kinship and stronger, weak ways. I think that in my experience, I've witnessed them become stronger. Though, you know, there's difficulties, right? So if you can't be in person, are there still ways you can connect like we are right now to support each other and to be a resource? So, yeah. I think that I've seen them become strengthened, even if the way the kinship networks look are different.
I think Debajani Bhora, her question is, do you think the continuous usage of social distancing will have a racist impact on kids' learning process?
Potentially.
Would it be the case?
Yeah, I think potentially that there could be a impact, and we've seen this, and I think both Shar and Dr. Shah spoke to this around such a rise in like xenophobia, and I've spoken about anti-Black racism here, but like anti-Asian sentiments that have risen is a response to the coronavirus and COVID-19, and even where that is spouted from our leaders. And so I do think that it's naive to think that our children are impacted by seeing those things. And so there are children who, you know, if they return in a socially distant classroom and have been hearing these messages and surrounded by these messages, that they might not act out and behave in particular ways that are, you know, microaggression or overtly racist.
I think that was good enough.
I have a question from Shubha. I mean, it's a different perspective she's looking at. She's asking, what is your suggestion for a woman who is a mother to a disabled child? They face so many problems on this quarantine period because they have to undertake so many therapies and they have to go for medication and all these things. So she's asking for your suggestion.
Yeah. I think my suggestion there is more for those of us who are not parents of disabled children, and ask what we can be doing to better support our peers who are parents of disabled children. Parents of disabled children are carrying this burden of navigating and supporting and advocating for their children every day. And this moment is making that work even harder. So we need to show up as a community and ask how we can support them. And, if this is coming from a parent of a disabled child, I would encourage you to reach out and ask for that help from people in your community, so that we can show up and do better as advocates and allies for folks who are experiencing oppression.
So I think you have received a lot of appreciation from all the participants because of your different perspective and very good presentation. Zanita ma'am, I think we'll be ending.
I think I'm done. Yeah, I think if everybody's done, are there anybody who wants to add something? Shall we end the session? I think it's been late actually.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I think we don't have any more queries.
So patient enough to answer all the questions, ma'am. So
yes.
She deserves the appreciation.
Yeah. You're very kind, patient, and definitely to the point. Your presentation was good, very affirmative and explanatory. Good job, Whitney. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being with us. It's been a real pleasure to have you with us when we were there now, and looking forward to see you soon back here in India on campus for some sessions soon.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you so much again to the university, to the Department of Women's Studies, Zanetta and Kalmazeti, and so good to see Sheila and Jayamala. So grateful to have had time to spend with you all.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time and for your questions and your engagement.
Thank you, Kamalaini.
Yes, ma'am. So formally, I'll propose a vote of thanks. First and foremost, I would like to thank Professor Susan for introducing Dr. Whitney and the OSU. So next, I would like to thank Whitney for accepting the invitation immediately. So when I approached Whitney, she was interested in presenting, and this is a teacher's job is an unrewarding job. Like you can't expect anything from the participants. You just deliver your knowledge at free of cost. And it was a great opportunity for us to listen to you, to get your knowledge shared. That's what most of the participants have left. So I thank Whitney and Professor Susan and Sharida on the whole. And I also thank Zanita ma'am for permitting us to conduct this webinar.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Vice Chancellor, Registrar, and our friends, colleagues in the Department of Women's Studies who are working so hard.
Dr. Mangai Karisi, she's helped us a lot.
And the technical staffs,
Janani.
Yes, who are all working so hard because we are also new to this technology and we are just getting used to this. And to make it happen, we were working for past 1 week and somehow we have made it happen. And my fellow friends, our colleagues who have actively taken part in this, like Jaymala, Manju Pushpa, Shanmu Veladam sir, Suresh Babu sir. So all our faculty members who are so supportive to us, who has joined us for this webinar.
And all the participants, the participants.
Other women studies participants, and it is a heterogeneous group for your knowledge, Whitney. So it was a large group who have come from medical background, paramedical background, social science background. So it's a huge heterogeneous group who have taken so much of interest in participating in this webinar. So
Sai Sujata madam from Tirupati. She's been there for 3. Very nice.
We are all happy to have you here, and thank you so much for taking part in this webinar. So we'll send back the feedback link now. Kindly fill up the feedback form and send it so that we'll improve ourselves, and also we'll send certificate via feedback link. Thank you so much once again, everybody, for being an active participant in this. And thank you once again, Whitney. for being with us. Thank you.
Thank you
you.
all. Thank you all. Good day, Whitney. Have a great day
Thank
ahead.
you, ma'am. Thank you for the
Yeah.
nice sessions, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah. And good night to the Indian friends. Bye. Thank
Thank you,
you.
ma'am.
Bye, ma'am.
Bye
Bye.
bye.
Bye, ma'am.
Bye.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Lo ponemos